Hello, beautiful beings. Thank you so very much for dropping by this video. A warm welcome to anyone who's new. This channel is dedicating to helping people understand the difference between traditional, classical, authentic, non-duality in the Vedic tradition called Advaita Vedanta and nonsense, watered down, distorted, silly, modernized, commercialized, delusional, uh, non-duality, often called Neo-Advaita or neo-non-duality, or when I'm feeling a little irritated, I like to call it what it is, fake non-duality. And a warm welcome back to any of my regular viewers. Thanks so much for dropping by. Hi to the live viewers. Feel free to put in any comments or questions. So I had a recent encounter with a Neo-Advaita teacher, but it was tricky because they weren't using the typical Neo-Advaita language. It was more like they had the energy of a Neo-Advaita teacher and some of the message, but without any of the ideas that we think of or normally hear in Neo-Advaita satsangs. So, short version, I was doing a live TikTok on the topic of surrender, which is considered a path, a valid path within Vedic thought. Ramana Maharshi talked about it sometimes, not a lot. And so the path of surrender in Vedic thought is about really entrusting yourself to higher power, to God isn't exactly the word because the notion of the supreme is so different in Vedic philosophy, but you could say surrendering to God with the caveat that their notion of the supreme is so different that you don't even want to use the word God, but that's another topic for another time. And how, because of the goodness of the supreme, everyone will be, you could say, redeemed or enlightened. So that was the topic. And this person comes up and starts giving a little talk about basically Neo-Advaita in Christian terminology. He said, well, there's two trees. There's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That's knowledge. That's any sort of philosophy or belief system. And then there's the tree of knowledge of life, and that you need to stop eating from the tree of knowledge and only eat from the tree of life. And you need to let go of all concepts and all thoughts. They're all not true. They bind you. Anything that you identify with is not really you. And he said, and I asked him, I was like, well, what about sort of practical knowledge, like how to change a tire? He's like, yeah, that's helpful, but that's ultimately an illusion as well. I was like, okay, now I see what's going on. This is some Neo-Advaita in Christian terminology. So I didn't debate with him. I wasn't in the mood, but it was fascinating because the energy was exactly the same. In essence, his message was, all you have to do is get rid of these concepts, and you'll be free. There's nothing else to do. And he's like, all thoughts are bad and evil and need to be eliminated. That was his fundamental message. And in the last piece, and this is the piece one of the pieces that is so harmful about Neo-Advaita, and really so harmful about rigid, dogmatic, conservative religion, is the notion that this is the only way. No other path is valid. It's like everything else is, in his terminology, everything else is an illusion. In dogmatic conservative religion, it's like, well, every other path is evil or satanic. That was so fascinating because, he didn't use any, and, he wasn't using Eastern language at all. So I didn't even catch it at the very beginning. I thought like, oh, cool, I'm talking to a mystic Christian. Wow, this is going to be interesting. And then I was like, wait a minute. So I'm not sure I have much else to say on it. I'm just really digesting. I think what really comes to mind, and I've been aware of this, but now this highlights it even more, is not just the Neo-Advaita language, but the core Neo-Advaita concepts of like just drop the mind, all thoughts are evil. And by the way, I mean, Ramana Maharshi completely contradicted that. He said, why do you need to get rid of thoughts? Just don't see them as separate from the self. Like the notion of getting rid of thoughts is so harmful because it's really a mission impossible. In fact, I did I'll post the link below. I actually did an interview with a traditional Advaita teacher where he said that is, harmful, untrue, not possible. I'm going to post a link for it in, one moment. I'll post a link to those interviews. It'll be below this video. So the thing with Neo-Advaita and the thing with what this guy is teaching is that it's a teaching that'll keep you spinning your wheels. I experienced it. Many, many people have experienced it. And this goes back to lack of preparatory practices. As Ramana Maharshi taught and as Adi Shankara taught, without the proper preparatory practices, self-inquiry, and what this guy is teaching is basically a form of self-inquiry, won't work. And you'll just constantly spin your wheels and not make progress. And in fact, in my experience, and many other people have experienced this, self-inquiry without the proper preparatory practices, and now what I've realized, and without the proper paradigm, you need a little bit of a paradigm to navigate the spiritual path. And that's not my teaching, that's the Buddha's teaching, and also Adi Shankara's teaching as well. I don't know that Ramana ever spoke to that. That's a whole nother topic. Maybe I'll save that for another time. That without the preparatory practices that prepare your mind, self-inquiry is not meant to deal with a volatile mind, a deep emotional and mental and emotional imbalances. And in my experience, and many other people, I've talked to many other people, that self-inquiry actually made their mental emotional challenges, like made it much worse. Because it's like taking the wrong medicine. If you have a specific illness or imbalance and you take the wrong medicine, it may do nothing, but it could make things worse. And in my experience, in my view, that's very much the case with self-inquiry for the unprepared mind. So I think that's all I have to share on that for today. Last but not least, the thing that's actually been coming to me very strongly lately is, the first step in recovery from Neo-Advaita for me was recognizing that it was BS. But the second step was to stop all non-dual reading, quote non-dual reading, watching YouTube videos, non-dual practices. But the hardest part was the constant thinking about it, and the studying it, trying to do it on my own. That was really, in some ways, one of the hardest parts, was because I was like addicted to it, and I was convinced it was the truth. And so I feel to put that out there, that's a necessary step. If you want to recover from Neo-Advaita, you just have to temporarily stop all Neo-Advaita activities. And I'm utterly convinced that trying to do non-duality, even traditional non-duality, on your own is Neo-Advaita. It's not meant to be done that way. Those are a few of my morning thoughts. Thank you so very much for dropping by. And I wish everyone a blessed, blessed day. Take care.